3 for mate, hey? Well, that's terrible. No, for real, but this week, I promise that I'll do a little bit better. I'd love to say a lot better, but I'm not going to get 3 out of 8. Hopefully, a 4 for mate. Let's go 4 for mate. Let's just get a 50% mark. I'll take that one. But as you can tell by the start of this video, this is going to be my round 4 tips and predictions. So obviously, last week's tips and predictions didn't go to plan. However, I'm hoping round 4 will be a little bit better. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get into the tips. Actually, just before we get into the tips, I just need to address the games that are going to be held in Queensland. I'm not exactly sure how many there is, but I think they're getting rescheduled. So when I'm recording this video, this is before they've actually been rescheduled. And I don't really know how it's going to play out. So that's just one thing to note before we take a look at these tips. However, let's go take a look at the first game. It's the Warringah Eagles taking on the Penrith Panthers. This one I feel like it's a fairly easy one. Last week I got 3 out of 8, but I was going to say the tips were actually quite hard because there was a lot of games that were pretty close. I mean, you had like Penrith up against the Storm, the grand final rematch. Even games like the Broncos and the Bulldogs. You even had the Tigers and Knights. They're all tough games to pick because they're kind of teams who were sort of similar in terms of ability. This week, just judging by the first game, not so much. Penrith, I think they should absolutely smoke Manly. Still no Tom Trbojevic, there's still no Manly. The Panthers, they'll have Nathan Cleary back, and obviously Matt Burton was absolutely fantastic for him last week. But Nathan Cleary is back. And there's talk that Stephen Crichton is going to play fullback, and then Matt Burton will play in the centres. I don't know if, look, I think it's named, but I don't know if it's actually going to happen. Look, I expect it to happen, but yeah, Matt Burton, he was absolutely fantastic last week. I think they need to find a spot for him because he's too good to be sitting in reserve grade, but at the same time, he can't really drop Jerome Illawarra and Nathan Cleary. So I think the centres is a good spot for him, at least at the time being. But yeah, with Manly, I don't really know what to say other than that just, they're not very good. And I think everybody knows they're not very good. Just re-signed Des Hasler. He just keeps picking the same side week in, week out, which is something that he did actually at the Bulldogs. And it was something that frustrated me to no end. But yeah, he just picks the same team and expects a different result. But I mean, to be fair, I don't know if there's anybody who's really missing out. I thought last week Josh Schuster looked pretty good for them. I think he was sort of the one standout for them, the one shining light. He's playing in the second row. He's a 5'8" playing in the second row, and I thought he looked pretty good. Just his ball playing did actually cause a few dilemmas for the opposition, but for the most part, I mean, Manly was just pretty terrible. Penrith, on the other hand, very, very good, obviously. Beat the Storm, that's a big win. So going from playing the Storm to playing Manly, I think they should absolutely shit it in. 13 plus Penrith. Now we move on to Friday night. It's the Canterbury-Bankstown Bulldogs taking on the South Sydney Rabbitohs. Now this one I feel like it's just like the previous game. It's an absolute mismatch. The Rabbitohs are so much better than the Bulldogs. Bulldogs haven't scored a point in 2 rounds. Now the first round they scored a couple of points. They looked alright. But the last 2 just absolutely terrible. Against the Broncos as well. You'd think they'd at least score 1 or 2 tries. But I don't know what to say about the Bulldogs other than they're absolutely terrible. I know I already said that. But yeah, they're just terrible. They're my team. And I don't know where the Bulldogs go from here. I know, obviously, 2021, they've got some good signings. Got Matt Burton coming across, Addo Carr. But for 2020, Wooden Spoon is definitely looking like a real possibility. The Rabbitohs, on the other hand, a premiership's looking like a real possibility. So you got 2 teams at the opposite ends of the spectrum. Look, Rabbitohs, fantastic. Obviously, absolutely destroyed the Roosters. Got a bit lucky in terms of injuries, but they well and truly had the game wrapped up, in my opinion, before the injuries started to happen. So, look, they were definitely the better side, and they're looking to be a firm premiership favourite, up with Penrith and a few others. But look, they should have no trouble with the Bulldogs. It should be Rabbitohs 13 plus easy. Moving on to the third game of the round, it's the Melbourne Storm taking on the Brisbane Broncos. And yet again, another mismatch here. The Broncos beat the Bulldogs last week, but I think any team could have quite literally beat the Bulldogs. Bulldogs are absolutely terrible. Broncos played in front of a home crowd as well, which obviously isn't going to be the case this week. Melbourne, I think this is one of the games that might be rescheduled too, due to the whole COVID stuff. But Melbourne, whether it's in Melbourne, whether it's in Sydney, I don't care. They're going to absolutely smoke the Broncos, and I'm going to pick them 13 plus. They're just way too good, and obviously after losing 2 in a row, I think they're going to come out absolutely all guns blazing, and I think they're going to get the job done. Not even get the job done. I think they're just going to absolutely pile on the misery for the Broncos. Broncos had that little bit of joy in terms of beating the last place Bulldogs, probably the worst team in the comp. But look, at the same time, like I said, it was only the Bulldogs, so I wouldn't read into it too much, despite them being pretty good. But yeah, I don't want to dwell on this game too much because I feel like this is quite obvious. I'm mostly picking the Storm 13 plus. I think it pretty much writes itself. The first couple of games been absolute mismatches. Hopefully the last couple of games aren't so much. Now we move on to Super Saturday. The first game is the Cronulla-Sutherland Sharks taking on the North Queensland Cowboys. Now I've talked about the previous games. They've all sort of been mismatches. This is the first game where it's not a total mismatch, but it still is somewhat of a mismatch in my opinion. Look, the Cowboys, they've been absolutely dreadful to start the season. The Sharks, I think they've been unlucky. Despite the scorelines, despite the results, I don't think they've been as bad as what their win-loss says. You look at last week, look at the week before, they were in the contest despite the scoreline sort of blowing out in the end, and a lot of injuries obviously piled on the misery, I should say. they were in the contest and they actually, they scored the first try and they actually looked competitive at times. Whereas the Cowboys, they've been absolutely dreadful against some opponents where you think they'd at least be competitive, maybe get the win. But yeah, like I said, at least be competitive. And they just haven't been competitive at all. Titans put an ass whooping on them last week. And I knew it was coming. I picked the Titans 13+. And that's basically just looking at the Cowboys side. You look at it and you go, man, that's dead set like a reserve grade side. You take out their two best players, Michael Morgan, who could possibly be retiring. Then you have Tamalalo, who's out for a little while as well. And they're literally nothing without them. Dead set nothing. Jay Clifford's been dropped. Isan Masters has been dropped. But I just can't see that helping them at all. Meanwhile, the Sharks, they actually look like a pretty decent side. Before the season started, I probably would have said the Cowboys would have had the better side. But I don't think I actually looked at the actual rosters. I thought I was just going off, Cowboys have Tamalalo. They've got a pretty good forward pack. But the forward pack's doing absolutely nothing apart from Tamalalo. Therefore, when he doesn't play and when he's not on the field, they look like total shit. The hooker position's not been great. The halves have been terrible. Fullback hasn't been any better. Like Valentine Holmes, they're throwing big money at him and he's been stuck on the wing. And now he finds himself back at fullback, but he's still a second choice fullback. I mean, Drinkwater's the first choice. He's a second choice. And even then, I think he's only getting picked there because he's on the huge money. It's just the Cowboys, I don't know what's going on with them. I was thinking Todd Payton would do them the world of good, but it doesn't seem to be the case. The Sharks, all I can say about them is they've been consistent. They haven't been the best team, but they've been consistent. They haven't really dropped off at all. They've just been unlucky in the teams they've come up against and sort of circumstances in those games. So for me, this one is quite an easy one. I mean, even in terms of home and away, it's a home game for the Sharks, so this just more buys into the Sharks winning this one. I'm going to go the Sharks 13+. I think this is going to be a great performance for them and a well-deserved win. Now moving on to the second game of Saturday is the Gold Coast Titans taking on the Canberra Raiders. Now this one I think has potential to be match of the round. I think this is going to be a really, really good game. Both these sides have played good at times, have got some wins, but haven't necessarily played to their potential. Now the Titans the last couple of weeks have looked really good, but obviously they had a shaky start against the Warriors, losing there, and then they took on, look, we just talked about the Cowboys, about how shit they were. The Broncos aren't much better, if not better at all. So it's hard for me to look at the Titans and say they're a genuine threat at the moment. However, they have looked good the last couple of weeks. Fafita and Big Tino, they've looked absolutely outstanding. The rest of the four packs really stood up. Haas has stood up. I like Tana Boyd at 6. Don't know what's going to happen with Ash Taylor, but I thought he looked pretty good last week. The rest of the backline, like Brimson, we all know Brimson, he's basically a superstar at this point. But the rest of the backline has been pretty solid. But this is going to be their first real test for me. Now, the Warriors, they obviously were a test, and obviously the Warriors got the win. But look, the last couple of weeks, playing the Brisbane side and also the North Queensland side, I feel like anyone could have won except for the Bulldogs. But most sides could have beat them, including the Titans, and I think the Raiders definitely would have beat those sides. Now, the Raiders coming off a loss last week. I don't think they've actually looked too good in 2021. I'm not really sure what's going on with them. They've looked a little bit lackluster, but maybe this is the game that they put it together. It could be, it might not be, but I don't know. But the Raiders, they have the potential to be an amazing side, a potential to win a grand final this year. And the Titans, I don't think they have as much potential this year, but this is going to be a good test for the Titans because the last couple of weeks, I feel like the hype's sort of been increasing for them after just completely getting killed off in that first round. The hype's sort of getting back to where it was in the preseason after a couple of wins against some pretty low teams. Whereas the Raiders, they lost last week. In a game they probably should have won. Obviously, they're both of them have lost to the Warriors. But this is the game the Raiders should have won, but sort of the injuries happened and some dodgy calls, let's be honest. So they did get quite unlucky. And funnily enough, Ricky Stewart even came out and said how proud he was of his side. So I think they should have some confidence going into this game. I'd love you to sit here and say that, your Titans going to win or Raiders going to win and say it with some confidence, but at least you have no confidence with this one. I think it could go either way. My tip is going to be the Raiders. I think the Raiders just have a little bit too much experience for them. I think just when the times are tough, I think the Raiders will be able to handle it. I haven't really seen the Titans in too much pressure, and when they did, they lost to the Warriors. So look, I think the Raiders, we've seen what they can do in the past. I'm just going to base it purely off that. However, the Titans, they've got a fantastic side, fantastic forward pack. I mean, either one you could go with, but I'm going to go Raiders 1-12. Now we move on to Sunday afternoon football. So Newcastle Knights taking on the St. George Illawarra Dragons. Surprising results going into this round. Before the season, I would have said the Knights would have been in a way better position than the Dragons. However, the Dragons find themselves in a better position than most sides. However, going into this game, obviously Ben Hunt has been a big factor into why they're going so good, and he's obviously not going to play. Last week they said he played something like 70 minutes with a broken leg, which I think is absolutely crazy, but it says a lot about Ben Hunt and his toughness. We already knew he's tough, but hearing about that news, I think that sort of just earned my respect a little bit more. But yeah, he's had a fantastic start to the year. Corey Norman's looked pretty good. Just the Dragons in general have looked quite good. And under Anthony Griffin, I didn't expect anything from him really. Just to be quite honest with you, I don't rate Anthony Griffin as a coach. However, look, he's actually doing some wonders with the Dragons. This Dragons side, on paper, should be getting beat every week. They should be a wooden spoon contender, and yet they find themselves winning 2 in a row against some pretty decent competition. In saying that though, I think this is going to be a tough ask for them. Playing Newcastle at home after Newcastle just lost, I'd expect Newcastle to be extremely fired up. And for the Knights, they've always been known as the team, at least in the last couple of years, they've always been known as a team who has a good side on paper, can compete with some of the better sides, but it's against those shit sides, like the Bulldogs in particular. You used to beat them every year despite having a much better side, and the Bulldogs would come in last position and would come and beat them, and you just look at the Knights and you're like, how's this happening? How's this side losing to a team like the Bulldogs? So the Dragons, in theory, before this season started, this would be one of those games that you look at the Knights and go, oh, I can't, how are they going to lose this one? And yet they would. But with how the Dragons have been playing, this is a game which I think the Knights should win this one, and I think they will win this one. However, the Dragons have been in pretty good form, so I can see the Dragons pulling off an upset, if that's what you want to call it. But yeah, the Knights, their 4-pack, absolutely outstanding. I think they'll be able to get it over the Dragons. Yeah, adding that Frizzell is playing against his former club, so I'm expecting a big game from him. He's had a fantastic start to the season, so yeah, I think the Knights will hit back this round, and I think they'll get the win. 13 plus. I'm going to go 1 to 12. I can't see it being a total blowout, but I can see the Knights sort of doing it half comfortably, but yeah, just not a total blowout, not a 13 plus, 1 to 12. Now on to the Sydney Roosters taking on the New Zealand Warriors. Now this is another one. Before the season started, this is a total mismatch. Even before last week, this was a total mismatch. You had the Roosters side, who were going to be a premiership favourites, taking on the Warriors, who should be a wooden spoon contender. And yet, we go into this game, and I can actually see the Warriors winning this one. A lot of it stemming around the fact that Luke Keary's out, and all the injuries that are happening at the Roosters at the moment. They've got so many. They've literally got so many injuries at the moment in key positions too. So it's not like, oh well, they've got this forward out and this forward, we can chuck this guy in. No, they've got a complete new halves pairing this game. And to my surprise, we haven't seen Joey Manu in the 5'8 position. I thought that was going to happen for sure, and then we would have seen Swaley come in. Swaley's actually on the extended bench, so it is a possibility, but they're going with Hutchison, they're going with Sam Walker. I think that's sort of your safe option. You go with them, see how they go. Both of the guys, well, not Sam Walker, but Drew Hutchison played a little bit of first grade, played last week. Hasn't really played too much as like a starting 5'8. A lot of the times he's coming off the bench, and when he has, he's just filling in for the most part. And when he has played, it hasn't looked super fantastic or anything. It's just been solid. So for him to have to come in and steer the ship, you got Sam Walker debuting. It's a lot of pressure to ask Sam Walker to come in and go up against these big Warriors boppers, because the Warriors have been absolutely on fire. Their 4-pack's been killing it. Just Fanua Blake, he's really been carrying that 4-pack. Just the addition of him alone has been absolutely outstanding for them. And he's just taken their 4-pack from like a 6 out of 10 to probably like an 8.5 out of 10. Like, he's that good. And I don't think I gave Adam Fanua-Blake enough credit in the past couple of seasons for how good he actually has been, because he's gone to the Warriors and he's just gone to a whole nother level. Or maybe he hasn't even gone to a whole nother level. Maybe he's just playing at that ability, but it just stands out more because he hasn't got Trebojevic and he hasn't got Marty Tapau next to him. I don't know, but either way, Fanua-Blake's been outstanding. So has the rest of the 4-pack. So they've got a lot of big guys there. And the Roosters, I mean, their 4-pack isn't exactly killing it at the moment. They've got a lot of guys who in previous seasons would have just been depth guys, but instead they're starting and they're on the bench. And like Angus Crichton went from being a guy who's on the bench to being their main second rower at the moment. But Victor Radley comes in this week. He'll be a big inclusion for them. And they've still got their incredible backline. They've still got the Morris boys, got Tedesco, Daniel Tupou. I think them alone can get them a win in this one. I think that just Tedesco himself, I think, can get the win alone. I think they'll have to rely on Tedesco and the Morris boys and just their backline in general to get them over the line against teams like the Warriors and that. It's just the teams like the Storm and Penrith and all that I can see them getting completely blown off the park. But against the Warriors, I can see them having a competitive game. Will the Warriors win this one? It's so hard to say because you just don't know how these halves are going to go. Maybe Sam Walker's going to come out and kill it. I'm going to back him. I'm going to back him to come out and have a good first game. I'm going to back the Roosters to win this one. I think everybody's going to expect the Warriors to come out and win this one because of all the injuries, and everyone's going to say it's the Warriors are the underdogs. It's like a weird one. I kind of feel like by default the Roosters are just the favourites because they're the Roosters, but when you actually look at the lineups, I feel like the Warriors actually have a fairly decent lineup in comparison to the Roosters. Look, they've got a good forward pack. They've got a lot to match them. The halves have gone pretty well for them at the moment. O'Sullivan looked alright. Nick Rama's been killing it. Tuivasa Shek's obviously there. He's been outstanding the last couple of weeks. So when you actually look at the teams, it starts to become like a thing where it's like, Roosters, are they really the favourite? Or are they just the favourite because they're the Roosters? Feels like I'm living in a whole other dimension in terms of saying, oh, well, the Roosters shouldn't be the favourites against the Warriors, but it's just the reality of the situation at the moment. The Roosters side is completely... It's in shambles, but at the same time, we don't really know what they're going to offer, and that's what makes this game such an entertaining one and such an intriguing one. Because I could say Warriors 1 to 12, Roosters 1 to 12, whatever. I don't really know what the Roosters are going to offer. So that's why it's so hard to make a tip for this one. I'm going to back the Roosters though. I'm going to say 1-12, but wouldn't be surprised if Warriors come out and win, or they win well. I don't really know what's going to happen. Now on to the last game of the round. It's the West Tigers taking on the Parramatta Eels. It's actually on Monday. It's on the public holiday. Totally forgot about this one, as to why we've got a different camera on. Had to use my webcam because my actual camera was out of battery. But I totally forgot about this one because it's on Monday. Not used to having the Monday games anymore, so this should be interesting. We have the Tigers, who actually got a win last week. Surprisingly got a win. Did not expect it to happen. Definitely didn't expect it. They did get very fortunate. The Knights were just absolutely terrible. That was so bad. Shibasaki pretty much lost the game on his own. And look, Michael Maguire, I think he even knew the West Tigers were gone. And then Shibasaki just went, nah, here you go. Have the game, Tigers. Here you go. There you go. In saying that, though, they did actually look quite good. For Luke Brooks was good at times. Just the Tigers team in general was good at times. I thought Adam Dewey's been a big addition to the side since he's come back from injury. But look, I think the real talking point for this game is going to be the Parramatta Eels. They've been looking really, really good as of late. Obviously, a win over the Sharks, always a good win to beat the Sharks. Then they also had a good win the week before. They're the smart bet here. I can't go against them. Gutherson's been in too good of a form. Ferguson's back to his best. Mitchell Moses didn't even really play last week. Obviously got knocked out quite early on. And I know last week's a little bit of an anomaly because the Sharks, they were pretty much done because of all the injuries, not necessarily because of how good the Eels were, because it was a pretty tough contest despite the scoreline. But look, Mitchell Moses, he went down. They got the job done. Will Smith came in. I think Mitchell Moses is going to be back this week, so in general, the Eels will be a lot better. Don't know if that's going to be the case, but that's just my thought process. So seeing that the Eels have already won the last couple of weeks, I think it shouldn't be too much trouble for them to beat the Tigers. But you never know. You never know with the Tigers. I've always said that about them. They're always that side that, you know, they can produce a 10 out of 10 game. They can also produce those 2 out of 10 games. They got a lot of players who are rocks and diamonds. And last week was a little bit of a diamond for them. Not necessarily a complete diamond because, I mean, the Knights, they were definitely the rocks last week. But yeah, look, they can provide an upset, but I just can't see it happening. So I'm going to go the Eels. I'm going to go the Eels 13+. I think they're going to win well. I think once the Eels get the lead, I think the Tigers, they would just self-destruct and that'll be the end of the Tigers. So yeah, Eels 13+. But that's my tips for round 4. Leave in the comment section below. What are your tips for round 4? What are your tips and predictions, I should say? Who's going to win? Who's going to lose? Do you agree? Disagree? Let me know in the comment section below. Also, while you're at it, go ahead and give this video a like if you did happen to enjoy it. Subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. I want to keep growing this channel, so definitely make sure you subscribe. Turn the notification bell as well, because we know the sub boxes are quite dodgy. Don't want to rely on that, so turn on the notification bell, get a little notification on your phone or your tablet or computer or whatever you're doing, and be notified immediately that I've uploaded. Also, while you're at it, go ahead and give me a follow on social media. It's on the screen right now. It's Mr. Luke and YT for the most part. My Facebook's just Mr. Luke, but everything else is Mr. Luke and YT, including Snapchat. So go ahead, give me a follow, give me an ad, do all that sort of stuff. But that's where I'm going to end this tips and predictions video. Stay tuned for more videos on the channel, and I'll see you next time. Bye.